Hello GCSE students, welcome to this video on the beginning of the History Boys. Let's get on with it. This is the very beginning of the text. We're using the visualizer, and that way it enables you to see the notes that I've made in the lessons that we've had. So, before we read, the key is to recognize that the very beginning, this particular scene that you can see on your screen, is a framing device. And all of the action happens sort of within it. So we're told, at the very beginning, Act 1, Irwin is in a wheelchair, in his 40s, addressing 3 or 4 unidentified MPs. In the text, the bulk of the text, Irwin is a sort of boy teacher, really. He's just out of university. He's in his early 20s. He is characterized as young. And so we're being told here that this is in the future. And we can either view this as a prolepsis, a flash forward, or we could view it as an analepsis, a flashback. Either could potentially work, really. If we say that this particular scene happens and Irwin then looks back, well, then the rest of the text becomes analepsis. And that's probably the way I'd encourage you to do it. Irwin is addressing 3 or 4 MPs, members of parliament. And normally we would expect MPs to address people, but it is therefore made clear that Irwin is the one in control. You'll see there at the top of the screen, Irwin's job is that of special advisor, sometimes these days referred to as SPADs. In the mid-2000s, when this text was written, these people were often known as spin doctors, their jobs being to manipulate the news cycle, what was going on in the news, in the media, so that it was favourable to members of parliament. And in this scene, what we see Irwin doing is advising the MPs as to how to address the public. What do you say to these people so that they trust you and believe you and leave you to kind of get on with doing whatever it is that you need to do? The other key detail, of course, is that Irwin is in a wheelchair. And so at this particular stage, either he's always been like that, or as we will come to learn very quickly, that wasn't always the case. And therefore, some kind of tragedy has befallen this teacher, or this man who was once a teacher and who is now a spin doctor, a special advisor, somebody employed by the government. What does Irwin say? He says, "This is the tricky one. The effect of the bill will be to abolish trial by jury in at least half the cases that currently come before the courts, and will to a significant extent abolish the presumption of innocence. Our strategy should therefore be to insist that the bill does not diminish the liberty of the subject, but amplifies it. That the true liberty of the subject consists in the freedom to walk the streets unmolested, etc., etc., secure in the knowledge that if a crime is committed, it will be promptly and sufficiently punished, and that far from circumscribing the liberty of the subject, this will enlarge it." I would try not to be shrill or earnest. An amused tolerance always comes over best, particularly on television. Paradox works well and mists up the windows, which is handy. The loss of liberty is the price we pay for freedom, type thing. School, that's all it is. In my case, anyway. Back to school. And then, in the scenes and versions of the text that we have seen, we usually get some thumping 1980s music from somebody like Duran Duran, the opening chords to Rio. Why? Because the music helps to place the text firmly in the 1980s. So we move back into the 1980s. Right. You may have noticed that as I was reading it, I was making a point of reading it very, very quickly. Why? Because if you want to trick people, or if you want to get people to listen to you but not really hear the substance, the truth of what you're saying, speak quickly, use big words, because it takes a brave person to put their hand up and say, "I'm sorry, I don't understand what you said because you said it too fast and I didn't understand the words that you used." People don't generally put their hand up and say, I'm sorry, I'm not as intellectually as capable as you. So Irwin is already suggesting that one way to dazzle people so that they don't ask you difficult questions. Speak quickly, but use vocabulary that's not every day. Therefore, what we have to do is actually understand what he has said. He says it's a tricky thing to get across. The effect of the bill, meaning new law, will be to abolish trial by jury in at least half the cases. So if say someone murders another person or something, some kind of crime occurs, generally, if you get put in front of a trial jury, then you'd assume that there are 12 people who are checking to see that they think the person is guilty or not. Well, if you take that away, then you're going down to one person, a judge. So removing trial by jury is usually not in the best interests of most of society, most of the people in the world. Therefore, if you remove trial by jury, what he says is you abolish the presumption of innocence. Now, British law is founded on the basis of you are innocent until you are proven guilty beyond any kind of reasonable doubt. What Irwin is telling these politicians to do is speak in such a way so that effectively we don't mind, we, the society, the British citizens, don't mind the fact that the chance of being found guilty is going up. Therefore, his character is already being cultivated by Alan Bennett, being constructed by Alan Bennett as tricky. He's tricky, but he's cynical. He's prepared to do and say what is required to get people to do as you need them to do. He's morally quite grey. He's morally ambiguous. It's not a question of right or wrong. It's a question of getting people to think what you need them to think. So as he continues, he says, our strategy should therefore be to insist that the bill does not diminish the liberty of the subject, but amplifies it. Therefore, our strategy, he says, should be not to diminish the freedom, but saying that we're amplifying your freedom. We're not taking your freedom away, we're giving you freedom. Yeah, right, Mr. Irwin. You take away, you amplify, you give us more freedom by taking our freedom away. It's cynical and it's dishonest. Alan Bennett may also be making a point here about politicians. Look at these shifty politicians with their sleek words and their slick presentation, tricking us into doing what we need them to do. We carry on. It says, in fact, that our true freedom, liberty, consists in the freedom to walk the streets unmolested, etc., etc. So we are free by being able to do the things that we've always been able to do, like, walk around and not get battered or mugged or beaten up or pestered or whatever. And these etceteras convey, they don't really care what people do and what they value as they walk around, etc., etc. What does etc. actually mean? Etc. means and so on. Why do people say etc.? Either because they don't know the detail, or because they don't care about the detail, or probably a combination of both. I don't want to be too political, but think about the politicians who run our country at the minute. Do we feel like they're always being honest with us? Do they speak in this kind of fluent but shallow way? Fluent but shallow means glib. Do they speak in this glib fashion? Irwin is suggesting to these politicians that if we tell the people they are free, tell the British citizens they are free, they will feel secure in the knowledge that if a crime is committed, it will be promptly and sufficiently punished, and that far from restricting, circumscribing the freedom of the subject, this will enlarge it. Yeah, we're not taking your freedoms away, we're giving you more freedom. Put it this way, if there is CCTV in Hoddesdon or Stansted Abbots or wherever it is that you live, some people would argue that it's freeing you because it just shows that you're not committing any crimes, and other people perceive that this is an infringement. It's it's taking away from some of your civil liberties, some of your freedoms. The next paragraph tells the MPs how they should present. Don't be shrill. Don't be too earnest. Don't be shrill. Don't tell them off. You know, you're not having a go at these people. Don't be shrill. Don't come across as aggressive or angry. But don't be like you're not earnest either. You're not trying to be their friend. So instead, what you do is you come across with an amused tolerance. Yes, you see politicians smile, as if the peasants couldn't possibly understand why we've had to make these decisions. So do amused tolerance. Yes, I do understand you have to ask me these questions, but yes, you really don't understand, which is why I can't provide you an answer to your question. That's what Irwin is saying. Come across as if you are superior. Your amused tolerance. It works best on television because it conveys the notion that the MP is in control, that they're in charge. I don't know how true this is, but when the text was written, this was kind of the text written in 2005, 2004, 5. This was how politics was done, and I think it's still done, really. Paradox works well. And we have just had a lovely couple of examples of paradox. We can improve your freedom by taking your freedom away. That's what the top section is all about, up here. But then what he does is he reduces those lines into a nice little catchphrase, because people love catchphrases. I'm being a bit sarcastic, I think hopefully that comes across, but people love catchphrases, don't they? The point is that most political parties have them. For the many, not the few. A new government. These are examples of new ones created by the Labour Party. I say new ones. For the many, not the few was part of the Jeremy Corbyn government, I believe. And I think I've got that example right. The new Labour leader, Keir Starmer, is seeking to push this idea of a new leadership, a new type of government. Because he wants to make the point clear that we need newness. He doesn't want any of that Boris Johnson rubbish, in his view, but he doesn't want any of that Jeremy Corbyn rubbish either. So he's constantly trying to sell. So this handy catchphrase here is typical of Irwin's style. It's the epitome of a glib response. It's fluent, but shallow. Sounds clever, doesn't mean very much. And the last line, where has he learnt these tricks? Where has he honed these skills of kind of clever speak? School. That's all it is, in my case anyway. Back to school. And throughout the text, we will see how Mr. Irwin teaches the boys these tricks. What you know matters. Yeah, it's good to know things. But how you present the knowledge is what's key to passing an exam, and we will see how it's also key to succeeding in life. Presentation is the key skill. That's it for this video. I'm going to continue with these, as I think they're a really excellent way to revise the text. I would encourage you to make notes and annotations, listen carefully, and if necessary, listen more than once. Hopefully it's useful. Any feedback gratefully received. And that's it for now. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.